What is nuclear? Nuclear refers to anything related to the nucleus, which is the central part of an atom. In the context of nuclear power or nuclear energy, it usually refers to the process of generating electricity from nuclear reactions, specifically from the fission splitting or fusion combining of atomic nuclei. Nuclear power is generated by harnessing the energy released during nuclear reactions. In nuclear fission, the nucleus of an atom, typically a heavy element like uranium or plutonium, is split into two smaller nuclei, releasing a large amount of energy. This energy is used to heat water and produce steam, which drives turbines connected to electrical generators. Nuclear fusion, on the other hand, involves the combining of light atomic nuclei such as hydrogen isotopes deuterium and tritium to form a heavier nucleus. Fusion releases even more energy than fission and is the process that powers the sun. However, achieving controlled fusion reactions on Earth has been a significant technological challenge. Nuclear power plants provide a significant source of electricity in many countries around the world, as they can generate large amounts of power with relatively low carbon emissions. However, nuclear power also raises concerns related to the management of radioactive waste, the risk of accidents, and the potential for nuclear weapons proliferation. While nuclear power has its benefits, there are also several concerns and risks associated with nuclear power plants. Some of the key concerns include: 1. Nuclear accidents. The potential for accidents at nuclear power plants is a significant concern. Accidents like the Chernobyl disaster in 1986 and the Fukushima Daiichi accident in 2011 demonstrated the catastrophic consequences of major nuclear incidents. These accidents can release radioactive materials into the environment, causing widespread health and environmental impacts. 2. Radioactive waste. Nuclear power produces radioactive waste that remains hazardous for thousands of years. The long-term storage and disposal of this waste pose challenges in terms of safety and security. The proper management of radioactive waste is crucial to prevent contamination of the environment and ensure the safety of future generations. 3. Proliferation of nuclear weapons. The use of nuclear technology in power generation can potentially be exploited for development of nuclear weapons. The enrichment of uranium and the reprocessing of spent nuclear fuel can be used to produce weapons-grade materials. The proliferation of nuclear weapons poses a significant threat to global security. 4. High construction and decommissioning costs. Building and decommissioning nuclear power plants require substantial financial investment. The costs associated with constructing and maintaining nuclear facilities can be high, making nuclear power economically challenging compared to other forms of energy generation. 5. Public perception and safety concerns. Nuclear power carries a stigma due to the potential risks involved. Concerns about safety, waste disposal, and accidents can lead to public opposition and skepticism. The perception of risk can influence public acceptance of nuclear power and impact the development of new nuclear projects. 6. Limited uranium resources. While uranium is relatively abundant, the long-term sustainability of nuclear power is dependent on the availability of uranium resources. As with any finite resource, there are concerns about future availability and the associated economic and geopolitical implications. It's important to note that advancements in technology and safety measures have been made to address these concerns. And nuclear power continues to be a subject of debate and research in the pursuit of cleaner and more sustainable energy sources. Nuclear weapons have been developed and used in war primarily due to their immense destructive power and their ability to cause widespread devastation. The development of nuclear weapons was motivated by various factors, including geopolitical rivalries, national security concerns, and the desire for deterrence. Here are some key points. 1. World War II and the Manhattan Project. The development of nuclear weapons began during World War II with the Manhattan Project, a research program undertaken by the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada. The project aimed to create an atomic bomb to gain a military advantage over the Axis powers. The successful testing of the first atomic bomb in 1945 led to its use in combat against Japan, with the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 2. Deterrence and balance of power. Following World War II, the Cold War emerged as a period of intense rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. Nuclear weapons became a central component of the strategic doctrines of both superpowers. The possession of nuclear weapons was believed to deter potential adversaries from launching a nuclear attack, as the consequences would be devastating for all parties involved. This concept, known as mutually assured destruction (MAD), aimed to maintain a balance of power and prevent large-scale conflicts. 3. Arms race and proliferation. The United States and the Soviet Union engaged in an arms race, continuously developing and testing more powerful nuclear weapons. Other countries, such as the United Kingdom, France, China, and later India, Pakistan, and North Korea, also developed nuclear weapons to bolster their own security or to assert their influence on the global stage. The proliferation of nuclear weapons has been a concern due to the increased risk of accidental or intentional use and the potential for regional conflicts. 4. Political and strategic objectives. Nuclear weapons have been considered tools to achieve political and strategic objectives. Possessing nuclear weapons can enhance a country's status and influence in international affairs. They can be used as a means of coercion, deterrence, or defense. However, their use can also escalate conflicts and lead to devastating humanitarian consequences. It's worth noting that the majority of nations have committed to non-proliferation through international agreements such as the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons (NPT), which aims to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and promote disarmament. Nevertheless, nuclear weapons remain a significant concern due to their destructive potential and the risks associated with their existence. The Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons (NPT) has played a critical role in curbing the spread of nuclear weapons and promoting disarmament since its entry into force in 1970. Overall, the NPT has been relatively effective in achieving its primary objective of preventing the proliferation of nuclear weapons. Here are some key points regarding its effectiveness. 1. Limiting the number of nuclear-armed states. The NPT has helped to limit the number of countries possessing nuclear weapons. When the treaty was initially negotiated, 5 states were recognized as nuclear weapon states: the United States, Russia, formerly the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, France, and China. These states are known as the treaty's recognized nuclear weapon states (NWS). The NPT has largely succeeded in preventing additional countries from acquiring nuclear weapons, with the exception of India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea, which are considered non-NPT nuclear-armed states. 2. Promoting disarmament. The NPT has played a role in promoting disarmament efforts among the nuclear weapon states. Article VI of the treaty obligates the NWS to pursue negotiations in good faith toward nuclear disarmament. While progress in disarmament has been slower than anticipated, reductions in the overall nuclear arsenals of the NWS have been achieved through bilateral arms control treaties, such as the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaties (START) between the United States and Russia. 3. Peaceful use of nuclear energy. The NPT has facilitated the peaceful use of nuclear energy by ensuring that non-nuclear weapon states have access to nuclear technology for peaceful purposes, such as energy generation and medical applications. Under the treaty, non-nuclear weapon states commit to accepting safeguards and inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) to verify that their nuclear programs are solely for peaceful purposes. 4. International cooperation and diplomacy. The NPT has provided a framework for international cooperation and diplomacy on nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. The treaty has served as a platform for dialogue, negotiations, and confidence-building measures among member states, contributing to the overall stability and security of the international nuclear order. However, challenges and limitations remain. 1. Non-compliance. Some countries, such as North Korea, have withdrawn from the NPT or violated its provisions, undermining the treaty's effectiveness. The failure of certain states to comply with their obligations has demonstrated the limitations of the treaty's enforcement mechanisms. 2. Disarmament progress. The pace of disarmament by the NWS has been slower than expected, and there have been calls for more significant efforts toward complete nuclear disarmament. The lack of progress in this area has led to criticisms of the NPT's effectiveness. 3. Nuclear weapon-free zones. While the NPT recognizes the establishment of nuclear weapon-free zones and WFCS as a means to strengthen nuclear non-proliferation, the establishment of such zones has faced challenges in some regions. The creation of NWFCS requires political will, regional cooperation, and the commitment of all relevant states. In conclusion, while the NPT has been largely successful in preventing the spread of nuclear weapons and promoting peaceful uses of nuclear energy, there are ongoing challenges and areas for improvement to further enhance its effectiveness in achieving nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation objectives. Establishing nuclear weapon-free zones and WFCS faces several challenges, both practical and political. Here are some of the key challenges. 1. Political will. The establishment of an NWFZ requires political will and cooperation among states in the region. All countries in the region must agree to participate and commit to the necessary legal, political, and security arrangements. Differing political interests, historical conflicts, and regional tensions can hinder the consensus needed for establishing an NWFZ. 2. Security concerns. One of the primary challenges is addressing the security concerns of states in the region. In some cases, countries may perceive nuclear weapons as essential for their security due to regional rivalries, unresolved conflicts, or perceptions of external threats. Convincing states to renounce nuclear weapons and rely on collective security arrangements, confidence-building measures, and non-nuclear deterrence can be challenging. 3. Verification and monitoring. Establishing effective verification and monitoring mechanisms is crucial to ensure compliance with NWFZ obligations. Developing and implementing robust verification regimes that provide confidence in the absence of nuclear weapons, prevent illicit nuclear activities, and address potential violations can be complex and require the cooperation and technical expertise of international organizations such as the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA). 4. Access to peaceful uses of nuclear energy. Balancing the objective of prohibiting nuclear weapons with the need for access to peaceful uses of nuclear energy poses a challenge. States within an NWFC may seek assurances that their right to develop nuclear energy for peaceful purposes will be respected, while non-nuclear weapon states may be concerned about the potential for diversion of nuclear technology or materials for military purposes. 5. Regional dynamics and geopolitical considerations. Regional dynamics and geopolitical considerations can significantly impact the establishment of an NWFC. Conflicting interests, power imbalances, and differing security doctrines among states in the region can complicate negotiations and hinder progress. The involvement of external actors and their interests in the region can also influence the establishment of an NWFC. 6. Legal and institutional frameworks. Establishing the necessary legal and institutional frameworks to support an NWFC can be challenging. This includes drafting and adopting legally binding agreements, defining the scope and obligations of the zone, and developing mechanisms for dispute resolution and compliance enforcement. Despite these challenges, successful examples of NWFCS exist, such as the Treaty of Tlatelolco in Latin America and the Caribbean, the Treaty of Rarotonga in the South Pacific, and the Treaty of Bangkok in Southeast Asia. These examples demonstrate that with political will, regional cooperation, and international support, it is possible to overcome the challenges and establish nuclear weapon-free zones. International organizations like the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) play a crucial role in establishing and monitoring nuclear weapon-free zones (NWFCS). The IAEA is the primary international organization responsible for promoting the peaceful use of nuclear energy and preventing the proliferation of nuclear weapons. Here's how the IAEA contributes to the establishment and monitoring of NWFCS. 1. Technical assistance and expertise. The IAEA provides technical assistance and expertise to states during the negotiation, establishment, and implementation of NWFCS. This includes offering guidance on legal frameworks, verification mechanisms, safeguards, and monitoring measures. The IAEA's technical support helps states meet their non-proliferation obligations while facilitating the peaceful uses of nuclear energy. 2. Safeguards and verification. The IAEA is entrusted with verifying and ensuring compliance with safeguards agreements, which are designed to verify that nuclear materials and facilities in non-nuclear weapon states are used exclusively for peaceful purposes. In the context of NWFCS, the IAEA's safeguards play a critical role in verifying the absence of nuclear weapons and preventing the diversion of nuclear materials for military purposes. 3. Inspections and monitoring. The IAEA conducts inspections and monitoring activities to verify compliance with safeguards agreements and provide assurances of the absence of nuclear weapons in NWFCS. These activities involve on-site inspections, environmental sampling, and the use of various monitoring technologies to detect and deter any illicit nuclear activities. 4. Training and capacity building. The IAEA assists states in developing the necessary technical capabilities and human resources for the effective implementation of NWFCS. This includes providing training programs, workshops, and capacity building initiatives to enhance states' ability to meet their non-proliferation obligations and carry out their responsibilities under the NWFC agreements. 5. Information sharing and reporting. The IAEA facilitates information sharing and reporting among states parties to NWFCS. It serves as a platform for exchanging information, sharing best practices, and promoting transparency in the implementation of NWFC agreements. The IAEA reports regularly to its member states on the status of safeguards implementation and compliance in NWFCS. 6. Mediation and conflict resolution. In some cases, the IAEA can play a role in mediating disputes or conflicts related to the implementation of NWFC agreements. It can provide a neutral platform for dialogue and negotiation, helping states resolve disagreements and address any concerns regarding compliance or security issues. The involvement of international organizations like the IAEA enhances the credibility, transparency, and effectiveness of NWFCS by providing technical expertise, verification mechanisms, and a platform for cooperation and dialogue among states. This contributes to the confidence and stability of the NWFCS and promotes the broader objectives of nuclear non-proliferation and the peaceful uses of nuclear energy. The International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) plays a role in ensuring compliance with nuclear weapon-free zone NWFC agreements through its safeguard system. The safeguard system aims to verify that states' nuclear activities are exclusively for peaceful purposes and that they are fulfilling their non-proliferation commitments. Here's how the IAEA ensures compliance with NWFC agreements. 1. Safeguards agreement. States within an NWFC are required to conclude comprehensive safeguards agreements with the IAEA. These agreements grant the IAEA the authority to apply safeguards to all nuclear materials and facilities within the state's jurisdiction. The IAEA verifies that these materials and facilities are used exclusively for peaceful purposes and not diverted for military or non-peaceful activities. 2. Verification measures. The IAEA employs various verification measures to ensure compliance with safeguards agreements. These measures include routine inspections, visits to declared nuclear facilities, and the collection of environmental samples for analysis. The IAEA may also use remote monitoring technologies such as cameras and seals to enhance its ability to detect any unauthorized activities or diversions. 3. Design information verification. The IAEA verifies the design information of new nuclear facilities to ensure that they are consistent with peaceful purposes. This verification is important in NWFCS to confirm that no undeclared nuclear facilities or activities exist within the zone. 4. Reporting and information exchange. States within NWFCS are required to submit regular reports to the IAEA, providing information about their nuclear activities, facilities, and materials. These reports help the IAEA monitor compliance and detect any inconsistencies or discrepancies that may indicate a violation of the NWFC agreements. 5. Special inspections. In the event of concerns or doubts about compliance, the IAEA has the authority to request special inspections. These inspections go beyond routine activities and allow the IAEA to investigate specific areas of concern or conduct inspections at short notice. Special inspections can be an important tool to address suspicions or verify compliance with NWFZ agreements. 6. Resolution of non-compliance. If the IAEA identifies a potential violation of safeguards obligations or NWFZ agreements, it reports the non-compliance to its member states. The IAEA Board of Governors, in consultation with the concerned state, works to resolve the issue diplomatically and address any shortcomings or breaches of obligations. It's important to note that the IAEA's safeguard system primarily focuses on verifying the peaceful use of nuclear energy rather than directly addressing the prohibition of nuclear weapons. The IAEA's role in NWFCS is to verify and ensure compliance with safeguards agreements, which indirectly contributes to the non-proliferation objectives of NWFCS by preventing the diversion of nuclear materials or activities for military purposes. There are consequences for states that fail to submit regular reports to the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) as required by their safeguard agreements. The IAEA relies on these reports to monitor and verify compliance with non-proliferation obligations and to ensure the peaceful use of nuclear energy. When a state fails to submit its regular reports, it is considered non-compliant with its safeguard obligations, which can lead to several consequences. 1. Diplomatic pressure. The IAEA may engage in diplomatic efforts to encourage the non-compliant state to fulfill its reporting obligations. This can include contacting the state, providing reminders, and seeking explanations for the failure to submit the required reports. 2. Reporting to the Board of Governors. If the non-compliance persists, the IAEA Director General will report the matter to the IAEA's Board of Governors. The board reviews the situation and may take appropriate actions to address the non-compliance. 3. Reporting to the member states. The IAEA will inform its member states about the non-compliance of the state in question. This serves to raise awareness among the international community and may prompt diplomatic and political pressure on the non-compliant state to rectify the situation. 4. Potential referral to the United Nations in severe cases of non-compliance, where the failure to submit reports or cooperate with the IAEA's verification activities seriously undermines the effectiveness of the safeguard system. The Board of Governors may decide to report the matter to the United Nations Security Council (UNSC). The UNSC has the authority to take measures, including imposing sanctions, to address the situation. It's worth noting that the consequences for non-compliance are designed to encourage cooperation and rectify any shortcomings in reporting rather than impose punitive measures. The aim is to ensure the integrity of the safeguard system and to facilitate the peaceful use of nuclear energy while preventing the proliferation of nuclear weapons. The United Nations Security Council (UNSC) has the authority to impose various sanctions in cases of non-compliance with international obligations, including non-compliance related to nuclear safeguards or non-proliferation commitments. The specific sanctions that the UNSC can impose depend on the circumstances and severity of the non-compliance. Here are some examples of sanctions that the UNSC can consider. 1. Diplomatic sanctions. The UNSC may impose diplomatic sanctions, which can include measures such as the suspension or downgrading of diplomatic relations, the expulsion of diplomats, or restrictions on diplomatic communication. 2. Economic sanctions. Economic sanctions aim to put pressure on the non-compliant state by restricting or prohibiting certain economic activities. These can include trade embargoes, financial restrictions, import-export bans, asset freezes, and investment prohibitions. Economic sanctions can significantly impact the non-compliant state's economy, trade, and access to international financial systems. 3. Arms embargo. The UNSC can impose an arms embargo, prohibiting the supply, sale, or transfer of arms and related materials to the non-compliant state. This restricts the state's ability to acquire military equipment and technology. 4. Travel restrictions and visa bans. The UNSC can impose travel restrictions and visa bans on individuals associated with a non-compliant state. This can include government officials, individuals involved in non-compliant activities, or those obstructing the resolution of the situation. 5. Military measures. In extreme cases, the UNSC may authorize military measures to address non-compliance. This can involve actions such as the use of force, peacekeeping operations, or the establishment of no-fly zones. It's important to note that the specific sanctions imposed by the UNSC are determined on a case-by-case basis, taking into account the nature and severity of the non-compliance as well as the political dynamics and objectives of the situation. The aim of these sanctions is to put pressure on the non-compliant state to rectify its behavior, comply with its international obligations, and restore international security and stability. The United Nations Security Council (UNSC) has the authority to impose sanctions on individuals associated with non-compliance with international obligations. These targeted sanctions specifically focus on individuals who are involved in activities that undermine international peace, security, and non-proliferation efforts. Here are some examples of sanctions that can be imposed on individuals. 1. Travel bans. The UNSC can impose travel bans on individuals associated with non-compliance. This restricts their ability to travel to or through countries that are members of the UN and can include the denial or revocation of visas. 2. Asset freezes. The UNSC can freeze the assets of individuals involved in non-compliance. This measure aims to prevent the individual from accessing or using their financial resources, thereby limiting their ability to carry out activities that undermine international obligations. 3. Arms embargo. The UNSC can impose an arms embargo on individuals associated with non-compliance. This prohibits the supply, sale, or transfer of arms and related materials to these individuals, restricting their ability to acquire military equipment and technology. 4. Restrictive measures. The UNSC may impose other restrictive measures on individuals involved in non-compliance. These measures can include bans on financial transactions, trade restrictions, or restrictions on engaging in specific professions or activities. It's important to note that targeted sanctions on individuals associated with non-compliance are typically imposed alongside broader sanctions targeting states or entities involved in non-compliant activities. These measures are designed to exert pressure on individuals who play a role in undermining international obligations and encourage them to change their behavior, comply with their obligations, and contribute to the restoration of international peace and security. The process for imposing targeted sanctions on individuals by the United Nations Security Council (UNSC) involves several steps. Here is a general outline of the process. 1. Identification and proposal. The identification of individuals associated with non-compliance or activities undermining international peace and security is typically initiated by a member state or a group of member states. They propose to the UNSC the inclusion of these individuals on a sanctions list. 2. Sanctions Committee. The UNSC establishes a sanctions committee or a subsidiary body responsible for overseeing the implementation of the targeted sanctions regime. This committee reviews the proposed individuals and assesses whether they meet the criteria for sanctions. 3. Deliberation and consultations. The Sanctions Committee conducts deliberations and consultations among its members to consider the proposed individuals. This includes gathering information, intelligence, and evidence related to their involvement in non-compliance or activities of concern. 4. Listing and designation. If the Sanctions Committee determines that an individual meets the criteria for sanctions, it recommends their listing to the broader UNSC. The UNSC then adopts a resolution that includes the names of the designated individuals and imposes targeted sanctions on them. 5. Sanctions measures. The UNSC resolution specifies the sanctions measures to be imposed on the designated individuals. These can include travel bans, asset freezes, arms embargoes, or other restrictive measures. 6. Implementation and compliance. Member states are responsible for implementing the sanctions measures in their national jurisdictions. They must enforce the travel bans, asset freezes, and other restrictions imposed on the designated individuals. Member states are also expected to report to the Sanctions Committee on their compliance with the sanctions regime. 7. Review and updates. The Sanctions Committee periodically reviews and updates the sanctions list to ensure its effectiveness and relevance. This involves considering requests for delisting or adding new individuals based on evolving circumstances and new information. It's important to note that the specific procedures for imposing targeted sanctions on individuals can vary depending on the sanctions regime and the situation at hand. The process described above provides a general framework, but the actual implementation may involve additional steps or variations based on the specific circumstances and legal provisions applicable to the targeted sanctions regime. Member states have the opportunity to appeal or challenge the inclusion of individuals on the sanctions list established by the United Nations Security Council (UNSC). The appeal or challenge process allows member states to question the designation of individuals and present arguments or evidence to support their case. Here are some key aspects of the appeal or challenge process. 1. Filing an appeal or challenge. Member states can formally submit an appeal or challenge to the relevant sanctions committee or subsidiary body responsible for overseeing the targeted sanctions regime. The appeal or challenge should outline the reasons for contesting the designation of the individual and provide supporting evidence or arguments. 2. Review and consideration. The sanctions committee or designated body reviews the appeal or challenge and considers the arguments and evidence presented by the appealing member state. They assess whether the information provided warrants a reconsideration of the designation. 3. Deliberations and consultations. The sanctions committee or designated body conducts deliberations and consultations among its members to assess the appeal or challenge. This may involve seeking additional information, consulting with relevant parties, or conducting investigations if necessary. 4. Decision and outcome. Based on the review and consultations, the sanctions committee or designated body makes a decision regarding the appeal or challenge. They may decide to uphold the designation, modify it, or recommend delisting the individual from the sanctions list. 5. Communication and notification. The decision regarding the appeal or challenge is communicated to the appealing member state. If the designation is upheld, the member state is informed of the reasons for the decision. If the designation is modified or the individual is recommended for delisting, the member state is notified accordingly. It's important to note that the specific procedures and mechanisms for appealing or challenging designations can vary depending on the targeted sanctions regime and the relevant sanctions committee. Member states should consult the specific rules and guidelines established for the particular sanctions regime to understand the detailed requirements and procedures for submitting appeals or challenges. The duration of the appeal or challenge process for targeted sanctions imposed by the United Nations Security Council (UNSC) can vary depending on several factors, including the complexity of the case, the availability of information and evidence, and the specific procedures established for the targeted sanctions regime. Here are some factors that can influence the duration of the process. 1. Internal procedures. Each sanctions committee or designated body responsible for overseeing a targeted sanctions regime may have its own internal procedures for handling appeals or challenges. The timeline for reviewing and deciding on appeals or challenges can depend on these internal mechanisms. 2. The complexity of the case. The complexity of the case and the amount of evidence or information presented can impact the duration of the process. Cases involving intricate legal, political, or factual issues may require more time for thorough review and consideration. 3. Information and evidence gathering. The time needed to gather additional information or evidence relevant to the appeal or challenge can affect the duration of the process. This may involve consultations with relevant parties, investigations, or acquiring intelligence or expert analysis. 4. Consultations and deliberations. The need for consultations and deliberations among the members of the sanctions committee or designated body can also influence the timeframe. These discussions may be necessary to ensure a comprehensive and informed decision-making process. 5. External factors. External factors, such as the availability of resources, scheduling constraints, or the urgency of the situation, can impact the speed of the appeal or challenge process. It is challenging to provide a specific timeframe for the appeal or challenge process, as it can vary significantly from case to case. In some instances, the process may take several months or longer, particularly for complex or contentious cases. However, efforts are often made to ensure that the process is conducted in a timely manner, balancing the need for careful consideration with the goal of providing a fair and efficient mechanism for appeals or challenges. The availability of resources can have a significant impact on the speed of the appeal or challenge process for targeted sanctions imposed by the United Nations Security Council (UNSC). Here are a few ways in which resource availability can influence the process. 1. Personnel and expertise. Adequate staffing and expertise are essential for efficiently handling appeals or challenges. If the sanctions committee or designated body responsible for the process lacks sufficient personnel or individuals with the necessary expertise, it can result in delays. Insufficient resources may lead to a backlog of cases or slower progress in reviewing and deciding on appeals or challenges. 2. Information gathering and analysis. The appeal or challenge process often requires gathering additional information or conducting investigations. Sufficient resources, including financial resources and personnel, are necessary to undertake these tasks promptly. Insufficient resources can hinder the timely acquisition, analysis, and verification of relevant information, which can prolong the process. 3. Legal and administrative support. Resource availability can impact the provision of legal and administrative support for the appeal or challenge process. This includes drafting legal documents, preparing briefs, conducting research, and ensuring proper administrative procedures are followed. Insufficient resources in these areas can slow down the process. 4. Translation and interpretation. The United Nations operates in multiple languages, and appeals or challenges may involve documents or proceedings in different languages. Adequate resources for translation and interpretation services are crucial to ensure effective communication and understanding among all parties involved. Insufficient resources in this regard may cause delays in the process. 5. Technical support. Depending on the complexity of the appeals or challenges, technical support may be necessary, such as IT infrastructure, data management systems, or specialized software. A lack of resources in these areas can impede the efficient handling of cases and prolong the process. In summary, the availability of resources, including personnel, expertise, financial support, and technical infrastructure, can significantly impact the speed of the appeal or challenge process. Sufficient resources are essential for ensuring a timely and effective process that upholds the principles of fairness, transparency, and due process. Organizations can take several steps to ensure they have sufficient resources for the appeal or challenge process in the context of targeted sanctions. Here are some strategies organizations can employ. 1. Resource planning. Organizations should engage in proper resource planning to anticipate the needs of the appeal or challenge process. This involves assessing the potential workload, identifying necessary personnel and expertise, and estimating the financial and technical requirements. 2. Adequate staffing. Organizations should ensure they have a dedicated team of personnel responsible for handling appeals or challenges. Having experienced staff members who are knowledgeable about the targeted sanctions regime, relevant legal frameworks, and procedural requirements is crucial. If necessary, organizations can consider hiring external experts or consultants with specific expertise in targeted sanctions and appeals processes. 3. Training and capacity building. Investing in training and capacity building programs for staff members involved in the appeal or challenge process is essential. This helps enhance their knowledge and skills, enabling them to navigate the complexities of the process more efficiently. 4. Partnerships and collaboration. Organizations can explore partnerships and collaborations with other institutions or entities that have expertise in targeted sanctions or appeals processes. This can provide access to additional resources, knowledge sharing, and mutual support. 5. Financial planning. Adequate financial resources are essential for supporting the appeal or challenge process. Organizations should allocate a sufficient budget to cover expenses related to personnel, legal support, information gathering, translation services, and any other specific needs that may arise during the process. 6. Leveraging technology. Organizations can leverage technology to streamline and optimize the appeal or challenge process. This includes using digital document management systems, collaboration platforms, data analysis tools, and automated workflows to enhance efficiency and effectiveness. 7. Continuous evaluation and improvement. Organizations should regularly evaluate the resource allocation and effectiveness of their appeal or challenge process. This allows them to identify areas where additional resources may be required or where process improvements can be made to expedite the process. By implementing these strategies, organizations can enhance their preparedness and ensure they have sufficient resources to effectively navigate the appeal or challenge process in the context of targeted sanctions. During the appeal or challenge process in the context of targeted sanctions, organizations may encounter several common challenges. These challenges can vary depending on the specific circumstances, legal frameworks, and procedural requirements. Here are some examples of challenges organizations may face. 1. Complex legal frameworks. The legal frameworks governing targeted sanctions can be complex and multifaceted. Organizations may face challenges in interpreting and navigating these frameworks, including understanding the criteria for designation, the evidentiary requirements, and the procedures for appeals or challenges. 2. Limited access to information. Organizations may encounter difficulties in accessing relevant information or evidence to support their appeal or challenge. Sourcing and verifying information, particularly sensitive or classified information, can be challenging and time-consuming. 3. The burden of proof. Organizations appealing or challenging a designation may bear the burden of proof to demonstrate that the individual should not be subject to sanctions. Meeting the evidentiary burden and presenting a convincing case can be demanding, especially when dealing with classified or confidential information. 4. Lack of transparency. The appeal or challenge process may face challenges related to the transparency of the decision-making and information-sharing mechanisms. Limited access to the reasoning behind designations, classified information, or confidential sources can hinder the ability to effectively challenge or rebut the designation. 5. Procedural constraints. Organizations may encounter procedural constraints or limitations during the appeal or challenge process. These can include strict timelines, procedural requirements, or limited opportunities for presenting arguments or evidence. Adhering to these constraints while building a robust case can be challenging. 6. Resource limitations. Insufficient resources, including personnel, expertise, financial support, or technical infrastructure, can pose challenges during the appeal or challenge process. Limited resources may lead to delays, difficulties in gathering and analyzing information, or inadequate legal and administrative support. 7. Political considerations. The appeal or challenge process can be influenced by political dynamics and considerations. The involvement of various stakeholders with differing interests and perspectives can introduce challenges in achieving a fair and impartial process. 8. Lengthy timeframes. The appeal or challenge process can be time-consuming, especially in complex cases or when dealing with a significant number of appeals. Lengthy timeframes can impact the ability to promptly resolve designations and can create uncertainties for the affected individuals and organizations. Addressing these challenges requires careful planning, expertise, and effective collaboration among relevant stakeholders. Organizations should anticipate these potential challenges and develop strategies to overcome them, such as engaging legal expertise, ensuring access to relevant information, and maintaining open lines of communication with the relevant authorities. Navigating complex legal frameworks and targeted sanctions requires organizations to employ effective strategies to ensure compliance and effectively navigate the appeal or challenge process. Here are some strategies that can help organizations in this regard. 1. Legal expertise. Engage legal experts who specialize in targeted sanctions and have a deep understanding of the relevant legal frameworks. These experts can provide guidance on the interpretation of the laws, regulations, and procedures related to targeted sanctions, as well as help formulate legal arguments and strategies. 2. Comprehensive research. Conduct thorough research on the legal frameworks governing targeted sanctions. This includes studying relevant international law, domestic legislation, regulations, guidelines, and case law. Stay updated on any changes or updates to the legal frameworks to ensure compliance. 3. Seek guidance from authorities. Consult with relevant authorities or regulatory bodies responsible for implementing and overseeing targeted sanctions. Seek clarification on any ambiguous aspects of the legal frameworks, procedural requirements, or evidentiary standards to ensure a clear understanding. 4. Build a strong evidentiary case, gather and analyze relevant evidence to support your position during the appeal or challenge process. This includes collecting information that challenges the designation, such as evidence of mistaken identity, lack of supporting evidence, or changed circumstances. Ensure the evidence is well documented, verifiable, and admissible within the relevant legal frameworks. 5. Collaboration and networking. Engage in collaboration and networking with other organizations or legal experts who have experience navigating targeted sanctions. Share insights, best practices, and lessons learned to collectively enhance understanding and develop effective strategies. 6. Compliance programs. Establish robust internal compliance programs to ensure adherence to targeted sanctions regulations. These programs should include procedures for due diligence, risk assessment, and ongoing monitoring to mitigate the risk of inadvertent violations and to demonstrate a commitment to compliance during the appeal or challenge process. 7. Continuous education and training. Provide regular education and training sessions for staff members involved in sanctions compliance and the appeal or challenge process. This helps ensure they have up-to-date knowledge of the legal frameworks, procedures, and best practices. Stay informed about legal developments through seminars, workshops, or publications. 8. Engage with legal counsel. Seek advice and guidance from legal counsel experienced in targeted sanctions. Legal professionals can provide strategic advice, review documentation, assist in preparing legal arguments, and represent the organization during the appeal or challenge process. 9. Document and maintain records. Maintain comprehensive records of all actions, decisions, and communications related to the appeal or challenge process. Proper documentation helps in establishing a clear timeline, demonstrating compliance efforts, and providing a basis for legal arguments. 10. Monitor legal developments. Stay vigilant and monitor legal developments, including court decisions, legal opinions, and guidance documents related to targeted sanctions. This ongoing monitoring allows organizations to adapt their strategies and ensure compliance with evolving legal frameworks. By employing these strategies, organizations can effectively navigate the complex legal framework surrounding targeted sanctions, enhance their understanding of the regulations, and ensure compliance during the appeal or challenge process. Organizations navigating targeted sanctions legal frameworks often encounter several common challenges. These challenges can vary depending on the specific legal frameworks, jurisdictional considerations, and the nature of the organization's operations. Here are some common challenges organizations may face. 1. Complexity and uncertainty. Targeted sanctions legal frameworks can be complex and subject to frequent changes and updates. Organizations may struggle to interpret and understand the intricacies of these frameworks, including the specific criteria for designations, applicable exemptions, and procedural requirements. 2. Lack of clarity and guidance. The legal frameworks governing targeted sanctions may lack clarity or provide limited guidance on specific issues. This can create uncertainty for organizations trying to ensure compliance or navigate the appeal or challenge process effectively. 3. Jurisdictional variations. Different jurisdictions may have their own legal frameworks and interpretations of targeted sanctions. Organizations with international operations may face challenges in understanding and comply with the varying requirements across multiple jurisdictions. 4. Access to information. Accessing accurate and up-to-date information about targeted sanctions can be challenging. Organizations may struggle to obtain reliable information regarding designations, updates, and changes to the sanctions lists and relevant legal developments. 5. Evidentiary requirements. Successfully navigating targeted sanctions legal frameworks often requires organizations to meet stringent evidentiary requirements. Organizing and presenting compelling evidence to support an appeal or challenge can be demanding and time-consuming. 6. Compliance burden. Ensuring compliance with targeted sanctions legal frameworks can be burdensome, particularly for organizations with complex supply chains or international operations. Organizations may need to implement robust compliance programs, conduct due diligence, and monitor ongoing activities to mitigate the risk of inadvertent violations. 7. Interplay with other regulatory frameworks. Targeted sanctions legal frameworks can interact with other regulatory regimes. such as export controls, anti-money laundering laws, or anti-corruption measures. Organizations may face challenges in understanding and aligning these different regulatory requirements. 8. Limited resources. Navigating targeted sanctions legal frameworks can be resource-intensive. Organizations may struggle with limited resources, including personnel, expertise, technology, and financial support, to effectively manage compliance and the appeal or challenge process. 9. Reputational risks. Violations or perceived violations of targeted sanctions can result in significant reputational damage for organizations. Organizations may face challenges in managing and mitigating these risks while navigating the legal frameworks. 10. Enforcement and consequences. Non-compliance with targeted sanctions legal frameworks can lead to severe consequences, including financial penalties, legal actions, and reputational harm. Organizations face the challenge of understanding and managing the potential enforcement actions and consequences associated with violations. To address these challenges, organizations should invest in legal expertise, establish robust compliance programs, conduct thorough research, seek guidance from regulatory authorities, and stay informed about legal developments. Collaborating with legal counsel and industry peers can also assist in navigating the complexities of targeted sanctions legal frameworks. Establishing a robust compliance program is crucial for organizations to ensure adherence to targeted sanctions regulations. Here are some best practices for organizations to consider when developing and implementing a compliance program for targeted sanctions. 1. Risk assessment. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify and understand the specific risks and vulnerabilities related to targeted sanctions. This includes assessing the organization's geographic footprint, business partners, customers, transactions, and industry sector. The risk assessment helps prioritize compliance efforts and allocate resources effectively. 2. Policies and procedures. Develop clear, comprehensive, and well-documented policies and procedures that outline the organization's commitment to compliance with targeted sanctions. These policies should cover key areas such as screening processes, due diligence on business partners, compliance training, record-keeping, and reporting obligations. Ensure that the policies and procedures are regularly reviewed and updated to reflect changes in regulations. 3. Screening and due diligence. Implement robust screening processes to identify individuals, entities, or countries subject to targeted sanctions. Conduct due diligence on business partners, customers, and other relevant parties to ensure that they are not involved in sanctioned activities. Establish procedures for ongoing monitoring of relationships and transactions to detect any changes in sanction status. 4. Training and awareness. Provide regular training and awareness programs for employees to educate them about targeted sanctions regulations, their organization's policies, and their compliance obligations. Training should be tailored to different roles and responsibilities within the organization and should cover topics such as recognizing red flags, handling sanctions-related transactions, and reporting potential violations. 5. Internal controls and monitoring. Implement internal controls to prevent and detect violations of targeted sanctions. This includes implementing transaction monitoring systems, conducting periodic internal audits, and establishing clear escalation and reporting channels for potential sanctions-related issues. Regularly review and assess the effectiveness of internal controls and monitoring mechanisms. 6. Record-keeping. Maintain accurate and comprehensive records related to targeted sanctions compliance. This includes records of screening results, due diligence processes, transaction records, and any communications or decisions related to sanctions compliance. Retain these records for the required duration as per applicable legal and regulatory requirements. 7. Reporting and communication. Establish procedures for reporting potential sanctions violations or suspicious activities internally. Ensure that employees are aware of their obligation to report any concerns or red flags promptly. Develop channels for effective communication and escalation of sanctions-related issues within the organization. 8. Compliance oversight and accountability. Designate a responsible person or team within the organization to oversee and manage targeted sanctions compliance. This includes providing them with sufficient authority, resources, and independence to carry out their duties effectively. foster a culture of compliance throughout the organization, and ensure accountability for adherence to targeted sanctions regulations. 9. External engagement. Stay updated on regulatory developments, guidance, and enforcement actions related to targeted sanctions. Engage with industry associations, legal counsel, and other relevant stakeholders to stay informed about emerging best practices, share insights, and seek guidance on complex compliance issues. 10. Continuous improvement. Regularly assess and enhance the effectiveness of the compliance program through ongoing monitoring, evaluation, and feedback. Conduct periodic reviews and audits to identify areas for improvement and implement necessary corrective actions. By following these best practices, organizations can establish robust compliance programs for targeted sanctions, mitigate risks, and demonstrate a commitment to compliance with applicable regulations. When it comes to targeted sanctions compliance, organizations should be vigilant and aware of various red flags that may indicate potential violations or risks. While specific red flags can vary based on the organization's industry, operations, and the applicable sanctions program, here are some common red flags to consider. 1. Matches on sanctions list. Any matches or hits on sanctions list, including individuals, entities, vessels, or countries subject to targeted sanctions, should be considered a red flag. It is crucial to conduct proper due diligence and screening to identify and assess the implications of such matches. 2. Incomplete or inconsistent customer information. Inaccurate, incomplete, or inconsistent customer information can raise concerns. This includes discrepancies in names, addresses, or other identifying information that could indicate an attempt to evade sanctions or conceal prohibited activities. 3. Unusual transaction patterns. Unusual or suspicious transaction patterns may suggest potential sanctions violations. Examples include frequent transactions involving high-risk jurisdictions, sudden changes in transaction types or volumes, transactions structured to avoid sanctions thresholds, or transactions involving sanctioned goods or prohibited industries. 4. Shell companies or fronts. The use of shell companies, nominee entities, or other complex ownership structures can be an indicator of potential sanctions evasion. Organizations should scrutinize transactions involving such entities and conduct thorough due diligence to understand the ultimate beneficial owners. 5. Third-party risks. Engaging with third parties such as suppliers, distributors, or agents without adequate due diligence can pose risks. Organizations should be cautious when dealing with intermediaries known for involvement in illicit activities or operating in high-risk jurisdictions. 6. Unusual payment methods or financial transactions. Non-standard payment methods, such as cash transactions, payments from high-risk jurisdictions, or the use of unregulated money service businesses, should be closely examined. Unexplained or frequent transfers between multiple accounts can also raise suspicions. 7. Adverse media or reputation issues. Negative media reports, sanctions-related investigations, or reputational concerns surrounding the organization, its employees, or business partners should be taken seriously. Such issues can indicate potential sanctions violations or associations with sanctioned entities. 8. Inadequate compliance programs. Weak or insufficient internal compliance programs, including the absence of screening mechanisms, poor record-keeping practices, or lack of employee training, can be red flags. Organizations should ensure they have robust compliance measures in place to mitigate the risk of sanctions violations. 9. Unusual trade routes or shipping practices. Unexplained changes in trade routes, frequent transshipment through high-risk jurisdictions, or abnormal shipping practices can raise concerns. These activities may suggest attempts to disguise the origin or destination of goods subject to sanctions. 10. Evasive or inconsistent responses. Inconsistent or evasive responses from customers, suppliers, or business partners when questioned about sanctions-related matters should be seen as red flags. Lack of cooperation or reluctance to provide requested information may indicate attempts to conceal prohibited activities. It's important to note that the presence of one or more red flags does not necessarily indicate a violation of targeted sanctions. However, organizations should exercise heightened due diligence, investigate further, and consider seeking legal advice when red flags are identified to ensure compliance with applicable regulations. While the specific list of high-risk jurisdictions may vary depending on various factors, including the nature of an organization's operations and the targeted sanctions programs in place. Here are some examples of jurisdictions that are often considered high risk in the context of sanctions compliance. 1. North Korea Democratic People's Republic of Korea due to its nuclear weapons program and human rights violations. North Korea is subject to comprehensive sanctions imposed by multiple countries and international bodies. 2. Iran has been subject to extensive sanctions due to concerns over its nuclear program and support for international terrorism. The sanctions have targeted various sectors, including finance, energy, and trade. 3. Syria. Ongoing conflicts and human rights abuses in Syria have led to the imposition of sanctions by several countries and international organizations. These sanctions target individuals, entities, and the Syrian government. 4. Cuba. The United States has maintained a comprehensive embargo on Cuba for several decades, restricting trade, financial transactions, and other interactions with the country. 5. Crimea and Sevastopol, Ukraine. Following the annexation of Crimea by Russia, many countries, including the United States and the European Union, have imposed sanctions on individuals and entities involved in the situation. 6. Venezuela. Due to political and humanitarian crises, Venezuela has faced targeted sanctions, particularly from the United States. These sanctions focus on various sectors, including the oil industry and the Venezuelan government. 7. Belarus. In response to human rights violations and political repression in Belarus, several countries have imposed sanctions on individuals, entities, and sectors associated with the Belarusian government. 8. Sudan. Sudan has been subject to sanctions in the past, although some restrictions have been lifted in recent years. Sanctions have targeted individuals, entities, and sectors related to conflicts and human rights abuses in the country. 9. Russia. Following its actions in Ukraine and other geopolitical concerns, Russia has faced targeted sanctions from multiple countries. These sanctions primarily focus on individuals, entities, and sectors associated with the Russian government and specific industries, such as energy and defense. It's important to note that this is not an exhaustive list, and the status of sanctions programs and high-risk jurisdictions can change over time. Organizations should stay updated on the latest sanctions list, regulations, and guidance provided by relevant authorities to assess the risk associated with different jurisdictions and ensure compliance with applicable sanctions requirements. Targeted sanctions often focus on specific industries or sectors that are deemed high risk or associated with prohibited activities in the jurisdictions mentioned. Here are some examples of industries or sectors that are commonly targeted by sanctions in these jurisdictions. 1. Energy and oil. Sanctions programs frequently target the energy and oil sectors, particularly in countries like Iran, Venezuela, and Russia. Such sanctions may restrict transactions, investments, or partnerships involving oil exploration, production, or trade. 2. Finance and banking. The financial sector is a common target in sanctions programs. Restrictions may include limitations on transactions with designated individuals or entities, prohibitions on providing financial services, or requirements to freeze assets linked to sanctioned parties. 3. Defense and arms trade. Sanctions often aim to curb the flow of arms, military equipment, or dual-use technologies to countries or entities engaged in conflicts or deemed a security threat. Industries involved in defense manufacturing, arms trade, or related services may face specific restrictions. 4. Technology and telecommunications. Industries related to technology, telecommunications, and cybersecurity may be targeted to prevent the transfer of sensitive technologies or surveillance capabilities to sanctioned jurisdictions or entities. 5. Luxury goods and retail. Sanction programs sometimes include restrictions on luxury goods trade to prevent the enrichment of designated individuals or entities. Industries involved in luxury goods manufacturing, retail, or distribution may face scrutiny. 6. Mining and natural resources. Sanctions may target the extraction, trade, or purchase of specific minerals or natural resources associated with conflict financing or human rights abuses, such as conflict diamonds or conflict minerals. 7. Aerospace and aviation industries involved in aerospace, aviation, or related services may face restrictions, particularly when it comes to the export or import of military aircraft, dual-use technologies, or other aviation-related goods. 8. Construction and engineering sanction programs may target construction projects, infrastructure development, or engineering services associated with sanctioned jurisdictions or entities, particularly in cases of human rights abuses or destabilizing activities. 9. Shipping and maritime sanctions may impose restrictions on shipping and maritime sectors, including vessels, shipping companies, and ports involved in illicit trade, sanctions evasion, or support for prohibited activities. 10. Chemicals and pharmaceuticals industries involved in the production, trade, or distribution of chemicals, including dual-use or controlled substances, may be subject to sanctions to prevent their diversion for illicit purposes or weapons development. It's important to note that the specific industries or sectors targeted by sanctions can vary depending on the goals and scope of each sanctions program. Organizations should stay updated on the latest sanctions regulations, guidance, and lists provided by relevant authorities to ensure compliance with industry-specific restrictions and requirements. Sanctions programs often impose specific restrictions on the financial sector to prevent prohibited activities, limit access to the international financial system, and disrupt the financing of sanctioned individuals, entities, or jurisdictions. Here are some examples of specific restrictions that may be imposed on the financial sector in sanctions programs. 1. Asset freezing sanctions may require financial institutions to freeze the assets of designated individuals, entities, or jurisdictions. This means that funds or other assets held by or on behalf of sanctioned parties must be frozen and not made available for their use or benefit. 2. Prohibition on financial services sanctions programs may prohibit or restrict the provision of financial services to designated individuals, entities, or jurisdictions. This includes activities such as opening new accounts, processing transactions, providing loans or credit facilities, or facilitating financial activities involving sanctioned parties. 3. Correspondent banking restriction sanctions programs may impose restrictions on correspondent banking relationships with financial institutions in targeted jurisdictions. This can involve limitations on maintaining or establishing correspondent accounts, conducting transactions, or providing certain financial services to banks in sanctioned jurisdictions. 4. Blocking measure sanctions programs often require financial institutions to block transactions or withhold transfers involving sanctioned parties. This involves preventing funds or assets from being transferred, paid, or processed on behalf of designated individuals, entities, or jurisdictions. 5. Prohibition on trade financing sanctions programs may restrict or prohibit financial institutions from providing trade financing, such as letters of credit, guarantees, or other forms of financing for transactions involving sanctioned parties or high-risk jurisdictions. 6. Restrictions on access to capital market sanctions may limit or prohibit sanctioned individuals, entities, or jurisdictions from accessing capital markets for fundraising or issuing securities. This can include restrictions on bond issuances, stock listings, or participation in investment activities. 7. Know your customer KYC obligations. Financial institutions are typically required to enhance their due diligence procedures and implement robust KYC measures to identify and verify the identity of customers, beneficial owners, and related parties. This helps ensure that they are not inadvertently facilitating transactions with sanctioned parties. 8. Reporting obligations. Financial institutions are often obligated to report certain transactions, activities, or suspicions related to sanctions violations to the appropriate authorities. This includes reporting blocked assets, attempted sanctions evasion, or transactions involving designated parties. 9. Prohibition on financial assistance sanctions programs may prohibit financial institutions from providing financial support or assistance to sanctioned parties, including loans, credit facilities, insurance, or investment services. 10. Compliance program requirements. Financial institutions may be required to establish and maintain comprehensive compliance programs to ensure adherence to sanctions regulations. This includes implementing internal controls, screening processes, employee training, and record-keeping practices. It's important for financial institutions to stay updated on the specific restrictions and requirements of relevant sanctions programs, as they can vary depending on the jurisdiction and the targeted sanctions regime. Compliance with these restrictions is crucial to avoid penalties, reputational damage, and legal consequences. Financial institutions that fail to comply with sanctions restrictions can face significant consequences, including legal, financial, and reputational ramifications. The specific consequences can vary depending on the jurisdiction and the severity of the violation, but here are some potential outcomes. 1. Financial penalties. Non-compliance with sanctions can result in substantial financial penalties imposed by regulatory authorities. These penalties can vary widely depending on the jurisdiction and the nature of the violation. Financial institutions may face fines, forfeiture of illicitly obtained funds, or disgorgement of profits derived from non-compliant activities. In some cases, penalties can reach billions of dollars. 2. Loss of licenses and regulatory actions. Regulatory authorities have the power to revoke or suspend licenses, permits, or authorizations of financial institutions found to be in violation of sanctions regulations. This can severely impact the institution's ability to operate, conduct business, or serve clients. 3. Criminal and civil liability. Serious violations of sanctions regulations may lead to criminal charges against the financial institution or its responsible individuals. This can result in criminal convictions, imprisonment, or personal fines. Additionally, affected parties may seek civil remedies such as lawsuits for damages against the non-compliant institution. 4. Reputational damage. Non-compliance with sanctions can cause significant reputational harm to financial institutions. The negative publicity and loss of public trust can impact customer relationships, investor confidence, and the institution's long-term viability. Reputational damage can be difficult to repair and may have lasting effects on the institution's standing in the financial industry. 5. Restricted access to financial services. Financial institutions that have a history of sanctions violations or inadequate compliance measures may face restricted access to correspondent banking relationships, payment systems, or other financial services. This can limit their ability to conduct international transactions, process cross-border payments, or engage in normal banking activities. 6. Enhanced regulatory scrutiny. Financial institutions that demonstrate poor compliance with sanctions regulations may face increased scrutiny and monitoring from regulatory authorities. This can result in additional reporting requirements, audits, or inspections, which can be time-consuming and resource-intensive for the institution. 7. Loss of business opportunities. Non-compliance with sanctions regulations can lead to the loss of business opportunities, as counterparties, clients, or partners may choose to discontinue or avoid relationships with non-compliant institutions. This can impact the institution's profitability and growth potential. 8. International repercussions. Financial institutions that operate globally may face consequences beyond their home jurisdiction. International cooperation and information sharing among regulatory authorities can result in cross-border enforcement actions, coordinated penalties, or reputational damage on a global scale. Given the severe consequences of sanctions non-compliance, financial institutions are strongly encouraged to establish robust compliance programs, implement effective risk management measures, and stay updated on relevant sanctions regulations and guidance. Financial institutions can implement several risk management measures to ensure compliance with sanctions regulations. Here are some common practices. 1. Policies and procedures. Establish comprehensive policies and procedures that outline the institution's commitment to sanctions compliance. These should cover customer due diligence, transaction screening, reporting obligations, and internal controls. Regularly update these policies to reflect changes in sanctions regulations. 2. Risk assessment conduct regular risk assessments to identify and assess the potential sanctions risks associated with the institution's customers, transactions, and geographic areas of operation. This helps prioritize compliance efforts and allocate resources effectively. 3. Customer due diligence CDD implement robust CDD measures to verify the identity of customers, understand their business activities, and assess their sanctions risk. This includes screening customers against sanctions lists, identifying beneficial owners, and monitoring customer transactions for suspicious activities. 4. Transaction monitoring and screening deploy automated systems for real-time transaction monitoring and screening to identify and flag potential sanctions violations. Implement filters and algorithms that can detect prohibited activities, suspicious patterns, or matches against sanctions lists. 5. Enhanced due diligence EDD apply EDD measures to higher-risk customers or transactions such as politically exposed persons PEPS, high-risk jurisdictions, or complex structures. This may involve gathering additional information, conducting independent research, or seeking external expertise. 6. Training and awareness provide regular training and awareness programs to employees on sanctions regulations, potential risks, and compliance obligations. Employees should be educated on the institution's policies, procedures, and reporting mechanisms to ensure their understanding and adherence. 7. Internal controls and compliance monitoring establish strong internal controls and compliance monitoring mechanisms to detect and prevent sanctions violations. This includes periodic internal audits, management reporting, and independent testing of the effectiveness of compliance measures. 8. Sanctions screening software utilize sanctions screening software or third-party services to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of customer and transaction screening. These tools can help identify potential matches against sanctions lists and reduce false positives. 9. Record-keeping maintain accurate and up-to-date records of customer information, due diligence investigations, and sanctions-related activities. Robust record-keeping practices enable effective audit trails and demonstrate compliance efforts to regulatory authorities if required. 10. Regulatory engagement and information sharing stay engaged with regulatory authorities, industry associations, and relevant forums to stay updated on sanctions regulations, guidance, and emerging trends. Actively participate in information sharing initiatives to enhance knowledge and understanding of sanctions risks. 11. Compliance culture foster a strong compliance culture within the institution, where sanctions compliance is prioritized and embedded in all levels of the organization. Encourage a proactive approach to compliance where employees are encouraged to report potential violations or concerns. 12. Ongoing monitoring and review continuously monitor and review the effectiveness of sanctions compliance measures, adapting them as needed to address emerging risks and regulatory changes. Stay informed about updates to sanctions lists, regulatory guidance, and enforcement actions. By implementing these risk management measures, financial institutions can enhance their ability to identify, prevent, and mitigate sanctions risks, thereby ensuring compliance with sanctions regulations and reducing the likelihood of violations. Nuclear power is generated through a process called nuclear fission. Nuclear fission occurs when the nucleus of an atom is split into two smaller nuclei, releasing a large amount of energy. Here's a simplified explanation of how nuclear power is generated. 1. Fuel preparation. The most commonly used fuel in nuclear power plants is uranium-200. And 35 uranium ore is mined from the earth and processed to obtain uranium fuel in the form of uranium dioxide UO2 pellets. These pellets are then stacked into fuel rods. 2. Reactor core. The fuel rods are loaded into the reactor core of a nuclear power plant. The core consists of numerous fuel assemblies, each containing multiple fuel rods. Control rods made of materials like boron or cadmium are inserted into the core to regulate the nuclear reaction by absorbing excess neutrons. 3. Nuclear fission. When a neutron is absorbed by uranium-235 nucleus, it becomes unstable and splits into two smaller nuclei, releasing additional neutrons and a significant amount of energy. This process is known as nuclear fission. The released neutrons may go on to strike other uranium-235 nuclei, triggering a chain reaction. 4. Heat generation. The energy released during nuclear fission is primarily in the form of heat. This heat is used to convert water into high-pressure steam in a heat exchanger called a reactor coolant system. The steam is then used to drive a turbine. 5. Electricity generation. The high-pressure steam from the reactor coolant system is directed toward a turbine. As the steam flows through the turbine blades, it causes the turbine to spin, which is connected to a generator. The spinning turbine generates electricity in the generator through electromagnetic induction. 6. Cooling. After passing through the turbine, the steam is condensed back into water in a separate system and returned to the heat exchanger to be reheated. This closed-loop system facilitates continuous steam generation and electricity production. It's important to note that nuclear power generation involves complex engineering and safety measures to ensure the proper control and containment of nuclear reactions, as well as the safe handling and storage of radioactive materials. Nuclear power plants incorporate multiple safety measures to prevent accidents and mitigate their potential consequences. Here are some key safety features and precautions. 1. Robust reactor design. Nuclear reactors are designed with multiple layers of physical barriers and safety systems to prevent the release of radioactive materials. These include the fuel cladding, reactor vessel, containment building, and emergency cooling systems. 2. Control rods. Control rods made of materials like boron or cadmium are inserted into the reactor core to absorb neutrons and regulate the nuclear reaction. By adjusting the position of the control rods, operators can control the power output and shut down the reactor if necessary. 3. Safety systems. Nuclear power plants have various safety systems to handle abnormal conditions and emergencies. These include emergency core cooling systems (ECCS) that provide cooling water to the reactor core in case of overheating, as well as containment systems to prevent the release of radioactive materials. 4. Redundancy and diversity. Important safety systems, such as emergency backup generators, cooling pumps, and control systems, are often duplicated to provide redundancy. This ensures that even if one system fails, there are backup systems that can take over. 5. Emergency planning and preparedness. Nuclear power plants have comprehensive emergency preparedness plans in place. These plans include procedures for responding to accidents, training for plant personnel and emergency responders, and communication strategies to keep the public informed. 6. Regulatory oversight. Nuclear power plants are subject to rigorous regulation and oversight by government authorities. Regulatory bodies set safety standards, conduct inspections, and enforce compliance with regulations to ensure that plants operate safely. 7. Operator training and qualification. Plant operators undergo extensive training and qualification processes to ensure they have the knowledge and skills to operate the plant safely. This includes simulators and regular drills to simulate emergency situations and practice response procedures. 8. Safety culture. Nuclear power plants foster a strong safety culture that prioritizes safety at all levels of operation. This involves promoting a mindset of continuous improvement, open communication, and a willingness to learn from incidents and near misses. It's important to note that safety measures in nuclear power plants are continually evolving and improving based on lessons learned from past incidents and advancements in technology. And best practices. Nuclear power plant operators are trained on various emergency response procedures to ensure a prompt and effective response in case of abnormal events or accidents. Here are some of the key emergency response procedures that operators are typically trained on. 1. Reactor shutdown. Scram. In the event of an abnormal condition, operators are trained to initiate a reactor shutdown, also known as a scram. This involves inserting control rods into the reactor core to halt the nuclear chain reaction. 2. Emergency core cooling systems (ECCS). Operators are trained to respond to situations where the core may overheat, potentially leading to a loss of coolant. They are trained to activate and operate the emergency core cooling systems, which provide cooling water to the reactor core to maintain its integrity and prevent fuel damage. 3. Containment integrity. Maintaining the integrity of the containment structure is crucial in preventing the release of radioactive materials. Operators are trained to monitor and respond to any signs of potential containment breaches, such as pressure increases, and take appropriate actions to maintain containment integrity. 4. Emergency power systems. Nuclear power plants have emergency backup power systems to ensure the availability of electricity even in the event of a loss of off-site power. Operators are trained to start and operate these emergency power systems, such as diesel generators, to maintain essential plant functions. 5. Emergency planning and communication. Operators are trained on emergency planning procedures, which include coordinating with off-site emergency response organizations such as local authorities and emergency management agencies. They are also trained on effective communication strategies to provide accurate and timely information to plant personnel, emergency responders, and the public. 6. Radiological monitoring. Nuclear power plant operators are trained to monitor radiation levels both inside and outside the plant. They are trained to use radiation detection equipment and interpret the readings to assess the potential radiological impacts and take necessary actions to mitigate risks. 7. Accident classification. Operators are trained to classify incidents or accidents according to predefined criteria such as the International Nuclear and Radiological Event Scale (NES). This classification helps determine the severity of the event and the appropriate response actions. 8. Emergency drills and simulations. Regular emergency drills and simulations are conducted to test the effectiveness of emergency response procedures and the coordination among plant personnel, emergency responders, and off-site organizations. These exercises help identify areas for improvement and enhance the preparedness of operators. It's worth noting that specific emergency response procedures can vary depending on the design of the nuclear power plant, regulatory requirements, and the specific emergency scenarios considered. Training programs are comprehensive and aim to ensure that operators can respond effectively to a wide range of possible emergencies. In addition to the emergency response procedures mentioned earlier, nuclear power plants have several safety measures in place to prevent the release of radioactive materials. Here are some key safety measures. 1. Containment systems. Nuclear power plants are equipped with robust containment systems designed to prevent the release of radioactive materials in the event of an accident. These systems consist of multiple barriers such as thick reinforced concrete structures and steel containment vessels that can withstand extreme pressure and temperature conditions. 2. Fuel integrity. The fuel used in nuclear reactors is designed to maintain its integrity even under severe conditions. Fuel rods are made of materials that can withstand high temperatures and pressures. Additionally, the fuel is carefully handled and stored to prevent damage or degradation that could lead to the release of radioactive materials. 3. Safety analysis. Nuclear power plants undergo extensive safety analysis during their design and throughout their operation. This analysis includes evaluating the potential accidents and their consequences, such as loss of coolant accidents or core meltdowns, and implementing safety measures to prevent or mitigate those events. 4. Safety systems redundancy. Critical safety systems in nuclear power plants, such as emergency cooling systems and power supply systems, are often duplicated to provide redundancy. This ensures that even if one system fails, there are backup systems that can take over and prevent the release of radioactive materials. 5. Instrumentation and monitoring. Nuclear power plants use advanced instrumentation and monitoring systems to continuously monitor various parameters, such as temperature, pressure, and radiation levels. These systems provide early warning signs of any abnormal conditions, allowing operators to take preventive actions before a situation escalates. 6. Operator training and procedures. Well-trained and qualified operators play a crucial role in preventing accidents and the release of radioactive materials. They are trained on proper operating procedures, safety protocols, and the handling of abnormal conditions to ensure safe and reliable plant operation. 7. Regular inspections and maintenance. Nuclear power plants undergo regular inspections and maintenance to identify and address any potential issues that could compromise safety. These inspections include checks on equipment, systems, and structures to ensure they are in proper working condition and meet safety standards. 8. Regulatory oversight. Nuclear power plants are subject to rigorous regulation and oversight by independent regulatory bodies. These regulatory authorities enforce compliance with safety regulations, conduct inspections, and assess the plant's safety performance to ensure that safety measures are being implemented effectively. It's important to note that safety measures are continuously reviewed and improved based on operating experience, advancements in technology, and lessons learned from previous incidents in order to enhance the safety of nuclear power plants. Nuclear power plants undergo regular inspections and maintenance activities to ensure their safe and reliable operation. The frequency and extent of inspections and maintenance can vary depending on factors such as regulatory requirements, plant age, design, and operating experience. Here are some typical aspects of inspections and maintenance in nuclear power plants. 1. Regulatory inspections. Nuclear power plants are subject to inspections by regulatory bodies responsible for overseeing nuclear safety. These inspections are typically conducted at regular intervals determined by regulatory requirements. The frequency can vary, but it is not uncommon for inspections to occur annually or every few years. Regulatory inspections cover various aspects of plant safety, including equipment performance, maintenance practices, and compliance with safety regulations. 2. Routine maintenance. Nuclear power plants perform routine maintenance activities on a scheduled basis to ensure the continued safe operation of equipment and systems. These maintenance tasks can include inspections, testing, calibration, and preventive maintenance of components and systems. Routine maintenance activities are typically performed during planned outages, which are scheduled well in advance and can occur every 12 to 24 months, depending on the plant. 3. In-service inspections. In-service inspections involve the examination of critical components and systems while the plant is in operation. ISI techniques can include non-destructive testing methods such as ultrasonic testing, radiography, visual inspections, and eddy current testing. These inspections are performed to detect any signs of degradation, wear, or potential defects that may affect safety or performance. 4. Reactor refueling outages. Nuclear power plants periodically shut down for refueling outages, during which the fuel assemblies in the reactor core are replaced. These outages typically occur every 12 to 24 months, depending on the specific reactor design and fuel cycle. Refueling outages provide an opportunity for extensive inspections, maintenance, and upgrades to be carried out. 5. Aging management. Nuclear power plants have programs in place to manage the effects of aging on equipment and structures. These programs include periodic assessments, inspections, and maintenance activities targeted at addressing aging-related degradation mechanisms. The frequency of these activities depends on factors such as the age of the plant, operating conditions, and regulatory requirements. It's important to note that inspections and maintenance activities in nuclear power plants are carefully planned and executed to minimize any impact on safety and reliability. Plant operators work closely with regulatory bodies to ensure compliance with regulations and maintain the highest standards of safety. Nuclear power plants have to address various aging-related degradation mechanisms to ensure the continued safe and reliable operation of their equipment and structures. Some common aging-related degradation mechanisms in nuclear power plants include 1. Corrosion. Corrosion is a prevalent degradation mechanism in nuclear power plants. It can affect various components and structures, including piping systems, heat exchangers, and containment structures. Factors such as water chemistry, temperature, and material properties can contribute to corrosion. Corrosion control measures, such as proper water chemistry management, protective coatings, and regular inspections, are implemented to mitigate its effects. 2. Fatigue. Fatigue occurs when materials undergo repeated stress cycles, leading to the accumulation of damage over time. Fatigue can affect components subjected to cyclic loading, such as reactor coolant system piping and turbine blades. Measures to manage fatigue include periodic inspections, monitoring of stress levels, and implementation of design modifications or repairs to address identified fatigue-prone areas. 3. Embrittlement. Embrittlement refers to the gradual loss of ductility and toughness in materials, making them more susceptible to fracture. Radiation exposure can cause embrittlement in reactor pressure vessel materials over time. Nuclear power plants employ surveillance programs to monitor embrittlement and take appropriate measures such as material testing, periodic inspections, and in some cases, vessel annealing or replacement. 4. Electrical cable degradation. Electrical cables in nuclear power plants can experience degradation due to factors like temperature, radiation, and aging. This degradation can lead to insulation breakdown, electrical faults, and fire hazards. Periodic inspections, condition monitoring, cable replacement, and cable aging management programs are employed to address cable degradation. 5. Concrete degradation. Concrete structures in nuclear power plants, such as containment buildings and auxiliary buildings, can experience degradation over time due to factors like moisture ingress, temperature changes, and chemical reactions. Measures to manage concrete degradation include regular inspections, repair, and maintenance of concrete surfaces, and application of protective coatings. 6. Aging of electrical and instrumentation systems. Electrical and instrumentation systems, including control systems, switches, and sensors, can experience aging-related issues such as component obsolescence, degradation of electronic components, and loss of calibration. These issues are addressed through periodic inspections, equipment replacement or upgrades, and regular maintenance and testing. 7. Thermal aging. High temperatures can cause thermal aging of materials, leading to changes in their properties and potential degradation. Components exposed to high temperatures, such as steam generators and heat exchangers, require regular inspections, monitoring, and maintenance to manage thermal aging effects. Nuclear power plants have comprehensive aging management programs that involve monitoring, inspections, testing, and maintenance activities to address these degradation mechanisms. These programs aim to ensure the continued safe and reliable operation of the plant throughout its operational life. Surveillance programs for monitoring electrical cable degradation in nuclear power plants are implemented to ensure the integrity and reliability of the plant's electrical systems. These programs involve various techniques and activities aimed at identifying and managing cable degradation over time. Here are some key aspects of surveillance programs for electrical cable degradation. 1. Visual inspections. Visual inspections are conducted to visually assess the condition of cables, connectors, and associated components. Inspectors look for signs of physical damage, such as cracks, abrasions, and degradation of insulation or jacketing materials. Visual inspections may also involve checking for signs of overheating, moisture ingress, or corrosion. 2. Electrical testing. Electrical testing is performed to evaluate the electrical characteristics and integrity of cables. This includes tests such as insulation resistance measurements, continuity checks, and insulation power factor measurements. These tests help identify any degradation in the cable's insulation properties or electrical continuity. 3. Non-destructive testing and DT techniques are employed to assess the condition of cables without causing damage. For instance, infrared thermography can be used to detect hot spots or abnormal temperature variations along the cable's length, indicating potential issues. Ultrasonic testing can be utilized to detect internal flaws or voids within the cable insulation. 4. Cable aging management programs. Nuclear power plants often have cable aging management programs in place, which include a combination of surveillance activities. These programs may involve periodic inspections, testing, and condition monitoring of cables. They also consider factors such as cable age, environmental conditions, and operating history to determine the appropriate surveillance intervals and actions. 5. Cable replacement and repair. Based on the findings from surveillance activities, cables that are identified as degraded or at risk of failure may be replaced or repaired. This can involve replacing individual cables, cable segments, or entire cable runs. Repair activities may include splicing or repairing damaged cable insulation or replacing faulty connectors. 6. Documentation and record keeping. Comprehensive documentation and record keeping are essential components of cable surveillance programs. This includes maintaining records of cable installations, test results, inspection findings, repairs, and replacements. These records help track the condition of cables over time, assess degradation trends, and support decision-making regarding maintenance and replacement strategies. It's important to note that surveillance programs for electrical cable degradation in nuclear power plants are designed based on industry standards, regulatory requirements, and the specific characteristics of the plant's electrical systems. These programs aim to ensure the continued reliability and safety of the plant's electrical infrastructure throughout its operational life. Cable aging management programs in nuclear power plants determine the appropriate surveillance intervals and actions through a combination of factors, including industry guidelines, regulatory requirements, cable characteristics, operating conditions, and aging assessment techniques. Here are some key considerations used in determining surveillance intervals and actions. 1. Industry guidelines and regulatory requirements. Cable aging management programs typically adhere to industry guidelines and regulatory requirements specific to nuclear power plants. These guidelines may provide recommendations on surveillance intervals, inspection techniques, and testing methods. Regulatory authorities often set requirements for cable aging management, including periodic inspections, testing, and reporting. 2. Cable characteristics and operating conditions. The characteristics of the cables themselves, such as insulation materials, voltage ratings, and environmental conditions, play a role in determining surveillance intervals. Cables operating under more severe conditions, such as high temperatures or radiation levels, may require more frequent surveillance and testing. Age and service life of the cables are also considered, as older cables may be more prone to degradation. 3. Aging assessment techniques. Cable aging assessment techniques, such as condition monitoring, non-destructive testing, and diagnostic testing, are used to evaluate the condition and degradation of cables. These techniques provide valuable information on the current state of the cables and help determine the appropriate surveillance intervals. The results of aging assessment techniques, such as insulation resistance measurements or thermal imaging, can indicate the need for further inspections or testing. 4. Operating experience and historical data. Operating experience and historical data from the plant and similar facilities are valuable in determining surveillance intervals and actions. Analyzing data on cable failures, degradation rates, and trends can help identify patterns and establish appropriate surveillance intervals. Lessons learned from past cable-related incidents or aging issues in the industry can also inform decision-making. 5. Risk assessment. Risk assessment techniques are often employed to evaluate the potential consequences and likelihood of cable failures. This includes considering the criticality of the cables in terms of safety, impact on plant operation, and potential for radioactive release. Cables deemed to have higher risk may require more frequent surveillance and testing. 6. Manufacturer recommendations. The manufacturer's recommendations for cable inspection, testing, and replacement intervals are also taken into account. Manufacturers provide information on the expected service life of cables and may recommend specific surveillance activities based on their design and materials. By considering these factors, cable aging management programs can determine appropriate surveillance intervals and actions, including the frequency of inspections, testing methods, and potential repair or replacement activities. The goal is to ensure the continued integrity and reliability of the plant's cable systems throughout their operational life. Several cable characteristics can affect surveillance intervals and actions in cable aging management programs. These characteristics are considered when determining the frequency of inspections, testing, and potential actions to be taken. Here are some common cable characteristics that play a role in establishing surveillance intervals and actions. 1. Insulation material. The type of insulation material used in cables can impact their aging characteristics. Different insulation materials have varying resistance to factors such as heat, moisture, radiation, and chemical exposure. Cables with insulation materials that are more susceptible to degradation may require more frequent surveillance and testing. 2. Voltage rating. The voltage rating of cables can influence their operating conditions and potential degradation mechanisms. Higher voltage cables may experience increased electrical stress, which can impact their aging. Surveillance intervals and actions may be adjusted based on the voltage rating of the cables. 3. Environmental conditions. The environmental conditions in which cables operate can significantly affect their aging. Factors such as temperature extremes, humidity, radiation levels, and exposure to chemicals can accelerate cable degradation. Cables operating in more severe environmental conditions may require more frequent surveillance and testing. 4. Cable installation and routing. The installation and routing of cables within the plant can affect their aging and degradation. Cables subjected to mechanical stress, improper bending, or abrasion due to poor installation practices may experience accelerated degradation. Surveillance programs may pay special attention to cables in areas with challenging installation conditions or routing challenges. 5. Cable age and service life. The age of the cables and their expected service life are important considerations in determining surveillance intervals. Older cables may be more prone to degradation and require more frequent inspections and testing. The remaining service life of cables, as determined through aging assessments, can guide decisions on the appropriate surveillance actions. 6. Criticality and safety significance. The criticality and safety significance of cables also influence surveillance intervals and actions. Cables that are essential for safety-related systems or have a significant impact on plant operation may undergo more rigorous surveillance and testing. These cables may be subject to more frequent inspections and additional diagnostic techniques to ensure their integrity. 7. Manufacturer recommendations. The recommendations provided by cable manufacturers regarding surveillance intervals and actions are taken into account. Manufacturers may provide specific guidance based on the design, materials, and expected performance of their cables. By considering these cable characteristics, cable aging management programs can tailor surveillance intervals and actions to address the specific needs and vulnerabilities of each cable system. This helps ensure the continued reliability and safety of the plant's electrical infrastructure. For cables with high criticality and safety significance, additional diagnostic techniques can be employed to assess their condition and integrity more comprehensively. These techniques go beyond standard visual inspections and basic electrical testing. Here are some additional diagnostic techniques used for cables with high criticality and safety significance. 1. Partial discharge testing. Partial discharge testing involves the detection and measurement of partial discharges that occur within the cable insulation. Partial discharges can indicate the presence of defects or degradation within the insulation, which may lead to insulation breakdown and cable failure. This diagnostic technique helps identify potential issues before they escalate and allows for targeted maintenance or replacement actions. 2. Tan delta power factor testing. Tan delta or power factor testing measures the dielectric loss properties of the cable insulation. It quantifies the dissipation of energy within the cable insulation and helps assess the condition of the insulation. High tan delta or power factor values may indicate insulation degradation or moisture ingress. This technique is effective in identifying insulation-related issues that may impact cable performance and safety. 3. Time domain reflectometry. TDR. Time domain reflectometry is a diagnostic technique that uses high-frequency pulses to analyze the impedance characteristics of the cable. It can identify cable faults, such as open circuits, short circuits, or impedance changes due to degradation or damage. TDR provides precise location information of the faults, facilitating targeted repair or replacement actions. 4. Acoustic and vibration monitoring. Acoustic and vibration monitoring techniques involve the use of sensors to detect abnormal sounds or vibrations associated with cable faults or degradation. These techniques can help identify issues like cable movement, rubbing against other components, or loose connections that may lead to electrical faults. Continuous monitoring of acoustic and vibration signals allows for early detection of potential problems and prompt corrective actions. 5. Thermography. Thermography, using infrared cameras, is used to detect abnormal temperature variations along the length of cables. Hot spots or areas of elevated temperature can indicate excessive resistance, current leakage, or localized heating due to insulation degradation. Thermography is a non-intrusive technique that can identify potential issues without physical contact with the cables. 6. High-resolution imaging and X-ray techniques. High-resolution imaging techniques, such as high-definition cameras or X-ray imaging, can provide detailed visual information about the internal condition of cables. These techniques are particularly useful for assessing cable splices, connectors, and other critical points. They can identify issues like loose connections, degraded insulation, or mechanical damage that may affect cable performance and safety. It's important to note that the selection and implementation of these diagnostic techniques depend on various factors, including the specific cable system, regulatory requirements, and industry standards. The results obtained from these techniques are integrated into the overall cable aging management program to determine appropriate surveillance intervals, maintenance activities, and potential cable replacement actions for cables with high criticality and safety significance. There are several regulations and standards that provide guidance on the use of diagnostic techniques for cables with high criticality and safety significance in various industries, including the nuclear power industry. Here are a few examples. 1. International Electrotechnical Commission (IEC) standards. The IEC has developed standards related to the testing and diagnostics of cables. For example, IEC 60270 provides guidance on partial discharge measurement techniques, which are commonly used for assessing the condition of high-voltage cables. IEC 60522 provides specific requirements for power cables used in power distribution systems, including diagnostic testing methods. 2. Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers IEEE standards. The IEEE has developed standards related to the testing and diagnostics of electrical cables. IEEE 400 provides guidance on the testing and evaluation of the insulation of shielded power cables using electrical methods, including partial discharge testing. IEEE 400.3 provides specific guidelines for the application of cable testing diagnostics in nuclear power plants. 3. Nuclear Regulatory Commission (NRC) regulations in the United States. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission (NRC) sets regulations and requirements for nuclear power plants. The NRC's Regulatory Guide RG 1.189 provides guidance on cable aging management programs, including the use of diagnostic techniques for safety-related cables. It emphasizes the importance of considering appropriate diagnostic methods to assess cable degradation. 4. International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) guidelines. The IAEA has published guidelines on various aspects of nuclear power plant operation and safety. IAEA, a Safety Standards Series No. NSG 2.12 provides guidance on the aging management of instrumentation and control cables in nuclear power plants. It includes recommendations on cable testing and diagnostics, highlighting the importance of using appropriate techniques for safety-critical cables. These are just a few examples of regulations and standards that address the use of diagnostic techniques for cables with high criticality and safety significance. It's important for operators and organizations to consult relevant regulations, standards, and guidelines specific to their jurisdiction and industry to ensure compliance and maintain the safety and reliability of critical cable systems. Yes, there are industry-specific regulations and standards that specifically address the use of diagnostic techniques for cables with high criticality. In the nuclear power industry, for example, the following regulations and standards provide guidance on the use of diagnostic techniques for critical cables. 1. Nuclear Energy Institute (NEI) guidelines. The Nuclear Energy Institute (NEI) in the United States has developed guidelines that address cable aging management and diagnostic techniques. NEI 914, Guideline for the Management of Cable Aging in Nuclear Power Plants, provides recommendations for the selection and application of diagnostic techniques for safety-related cables. It emphasizes the need for periodic testing and the use of appropriate diagnostic methods to assess cable conditions and identify potential degradation. 2. Electric Power Research Institute (EPRI) guidelines. The Electric Power Research Institute (EPRI) in the United States has produced technical guidelines and reports on cable aging management. These resources, such as EPRI NP 5652, Guidelines for the Evaluation and Mitigation of Transformer and Switchgear Bushing Failures, provide recommendations on the use of diagnostic techniques for critical electrical equipment, including cables. EPRI guidelines often incorporate industry best practices and lessons learned. 3. International Cable Aging Program (ICAP). The International Cable Aging Program (ICAP) is a collaborative effort among electric utilities and organizations worldwide to address cable aging issues. ICAP provides guidelines and best practices for cable aging management, including the use of diagnostic techniques. ICAP documents, such as ICAP 2005, Guidelines for the evaluation and management of aging of medium voltage cables offer recommendations on cable testing and diagnostics for high criticality cables. These industry-specific regulations and standards are developed by organizations with expertise in the field and are tailored to address the unique requirements and challenges of critical cable systems in specific industries, such as nuclear power. They provide valuable guidance on the selection, implementation, and interpretation of diagnostic techniques for cables with high criticality, ensuring the safety and reliability of these important systems. It's essential for operators and organizations in their respective industries to stay updated with the latest versions of these regulations, guidelines, and standards to ensure compliance and effective cable aging management practices. Several industries have industry-specific regulations and standards that address cable diagnostic techniques. Here are a few examples. 1. Oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry often operates in harsh and demanding environments where reliable cable systems are crucial for safety and operational integrity. Regulatory bodies and industry organizations, such as the American Petroleum Institute (API) and the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers (IOGP), provide guidelines and standards for cable management and diagnostics. For example, API RP14F and API RP14FZ provide recommendations for the design, installation, and maintenance of electrical systems in offshore and onshore facilities, including requirements for cable testing and diagnostics. 2. Aerospace industry. The aerospace industry relies on cable systems for critical applications such as aircraft wiring and avionics. Regulatory bodies like the Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) in the United States and the European Union Aviation Safety Agency (EASA) have regulations and guidelines in place to ensure the safety and reliability of aircraft electrical systems. These regulations often include requirements for cable testing and diagnostics, such as the inspection of wiring systems, electrical continuity checks, and periodic inspections to detect aging or damage. 3. Rail transportation industry. The rail transportation industry has specific regulations and standards related to the management and maintenance of electrical cables in rail systems. Organizations like the International Union of Railways (UIC) and national rail regulatory bodies provide guidelines for cable management, including diagnostic techniques. These guidelines address cable inspection, testing, and maintenance practices to ensure the safe and reliable operation of rail systems. 4. Telecommunications industry. The telecommunications industry relies on cable networks for data transmission and communication services. Regulatory bodies and industry associations, such as the Federal Communications Commission (FCC) in the United States, have regulations and standards that govern the installation, maintenance, and testing of telecommunication cables. These regulations often include requirements for cable diagnostic techniques to assess the integrity and performance of the cables. These are just a few examples of industries that have industry-specific regulations and standards for cable diagnostic techniques. Each industry has its own unique requirements, challenges, and safety considerations, which are addressed through specific guidelines and practices. It's important for organizations operating in these industries to familiarize themselves with the relevant regulations and standards to ensure compliance and the effective management of cable systems. In the aerospace industry, cable testing and diagnostic techniques are employed to ensure the reliability and safety of electrical systems in aircraft. Here are some specific techniques used in the aerospace industry. 1. Continuity testing. Continuity testing is a fundamental technique used to verify the integrity of electrical circuits and cables in aerospace applications. It involves measuring the electrical continuity between different points in a cable or circuit to ensure there are no breaks or open circuits. Continuity testing is typically performed using specialized test equipment such as multimeters or cable harness testers. 2. Insulation resistance testing. Insulation resistance testing is conducted to assess the insulation integrity of cables and wiring systems. This test measures the resistance between the conductors and the insulation material. It helps identify any insulation breakdown or degradation that could lead to electrical faults or shorts. Insulation resistance testing is usually performed using high-voltage megameters. 3. High potential HIPAA testing. HIPAA testing, also known as dielectric withstand testing, is performed to verify the insulation strength of cables and wiring systems. It applies a high voltage between the conductors and the cable shield or ground to check for any insulation weaknesses or faults. HIPAA testing ensures that the cables can withstand the specified voltage without breakdown or excessive leakage currents. 4. Capacitance testing. Capacitance testing is used to measure the electrical capacitance of cables. It helps identify changes in the cable's capacitance due to factors like insulation degradation or moisture ingress. By comparing the measured capacitance values against specified limits, potential issues such as insulation deterioration or contamination can be detected. 5. Time domain reflectometry. TDR. Time domain reflectometry is a diagnostic technique that uses high-frequency pulses to analyze the impedance characteristics of cables. In the aerospace industry, TDR is used to identify cable faults, such as open circuits, short circuits, or impedance changes due to damage or degradation. TDR provides precise location information of the faults, helping technicians pinpoint issues for repair or replacement. 6. Thermography. Thermography is employed to detect abnormal temperature variations along the length of cables. In aerospace applications, infrared cameras are used to capture thermal images of cables and wiring systems. Hotspots or areas of elevated temperature can indicate excessive resistance, current leakage, or localized heating due to insulation degradation or faulty connections. These are some of the cable testing and diagnostic techniques commonly used in the aerospace industry. The specific techniques employed may vary depending on the aircraft type, regulatory requirements, and the specific electrical systems being evaluated. Stringent testing and diagnostic procedures are essential to maintain the reliability and safety of electrical systems in aircraft. Cable testing techniques play a vital role in the overall maintenance process for aircraft. They are integrated at different stages to ensure the reliability and safety of electrical systems. Here's how these cable testing techniques are typically incorporated into the aircraft maintenance process. 1. Scheduled inspections. Regularly scheduled inspections are conducted as part of preventive maintenance programs for aircraft. During these inspections, cable testing techniques such as continuity testing, insulation resistance testing, and capacitance testing may be performed on selected cables and wiring systems. These tests help identify any potential issues or degradation before they result in failures or malfunctions. 2. Line maintenance. Line maintenance refers to routine maintenance tasks performed during aircraft turnarounds between flights. Cable testing techniques are often used as part of line maintenance activities to quickly assess the condition of critical cables and wiring systems. Technicians may perform simple continuity checks or use handheld diagnostic tools to detect any obvious faults or issues that require further investigation or repair. 3. Troubleshooting and fault isolation. When an electrical fault or malfunction occurs on an aircraft, cable testing techniques become crucial in the troubleshooting and fault isolation process. Technicians use a combination of continuity testing, TDR, thermography, and other diagnostic techniques to locate and identify the source of the problem within the cable systems. These tests help pinpoint the exact cable or connection that is causing the issue, enabling targeted repairs or replacements. 4. Scheduled maintenance and overhaul. During scheduled maintenance and overhaul events, comprehensive cable testing is often conducted. This may involve more extensive diagnostic procedures such as high-potential HIPAA testing to verify the insulation integrity of cables. Insulation resistance testing, capacitance testing, and other techniques may also be employed to assess the condition of cables and wiring systems and identify any degradation or potential issues. 5. Record keeping and trend analysis. Cable testing results and findings are documented and recorded as part of the aircraft maintenance records. This information is crucial for establishing a historical perspective on the condition of cables and wiring systems. Trend analysis of cable test data over time helps detect any deterioration trends, identify recurring issues, and make informed decisions regarding maintenance, repair, or replacement strategies. It's worth noting that the specific integration and utilization of cable testing techniques can vary based on aircraft type, regulatory requirements, and the maintenance practices of individual airlines or operators. However, overall, these techniques are incorporated at different stages of the maintenance process to ensure the continued airworthiness and reliability of aircraft electrical systems. Cable testing techniques can help identify various issues and degradation in cables and wiring systems. Here are some common problems that these techniques can detect. 1. Open circuits. Cable testing techniques such as continuity testing and TDR can identify open circuits where the electrical path is interrupted. An open circuit can occur due to cable breakage, loose connections, or damaged conductors. Detecting open circuits is crucial as they can lead to loss of power, signal transmission failure, or malfunctions in the electrical system. 2. Short circuits. Cable testing techniques, including continuity testing and TDR, can identify short circuit, where two or more conductors come into contact. Short circuits can result from damaged insulation, pinched or crushed cables, or faulty connections. These faults can cause excessive current flow, overheating, and potential equipment damage or safety hazards. 3. Insulation degradation. Insulation resistance testing and high potential HIPAA testing are effective in detecting insulation degradation in cables. Over time, cables can experience insulation breakdown due to factors like aging, environmental conditions, or chemical exposure. Cable testing techniques can identify weakened insulation, which can lead to electrical leakage, reduced insulation resistance, and potential short circuits or malfunctions. 4. Impedance changes. Time domain reflectometry (TDR) is particularly useful for identifying impedance changes in cables. Impedance variations can occur due to factors like cable damage, moisture ingress, or connector issues. TDR can detect changes in the reflected signals, providing insights into discontinuities, impedance mismatches, or faults along the cable length. 5. Faulty connections. Cable testing techniques can help identify faulty or loose connections within cable systems. Continuity testing, thermography, and visual inspections can reveal loose or corroded connectors, improper terminations, or inadequate crimping. Detecting faulty connections is crucial to ensure proper electrical conductivity, prevent signal degradation, and mitigate the risk of intermittent faults. 6. Overheating or hot spots. Thermography is an effective technique to identify abnormal temperature variations along cables. It can uncover areas of overheating or hot spots caused by excessive resistance, current leakage, or poor electrical contacts. Overheating can lead to insulation breakdown, accelerated aging, and potential fire hazards, making early detection crucial for preventive maintenance. By employing these cable testing techniques, technicians can proactively identify and address these issues and degradation in cables and wiring systems. Regular testing and inspections help ensure the continued reliability, safety, and performance of electrical systems in various industries, including aerospace, automotive, power generation, and more. Yes, cable testing techniques can also detect issues related to signal quality or data transmission in addition to identifying physical faults. Here are some examples. 1. Signal integrity. Cable testing techniques such as TDR, time domain reflectometry, and frequency domain analysis can assess the integrity of signals transmitted through cables. They can detect issues like signal attenuation, impedance mismatches, reflections, or crosstalk. These problems can degrade signal quality, introduce noise, and potentially disrupt data transmission. 2. Crosstalk. Crosstalk refers to the interference caused by electromagnetic coupling between adjacent cables. Cable testing techniques can identify crosstalk issues by measuring the level of unwanted signal coupling from neighboring cables. By detecting and quantifying crosstalk, technicians can take necessary measures to mitigate its effects, such as improving cable shielding or separation. 3. Data transmission errors. Cable testing techniques can indirectly identify data transmission errors by evaluating the overall quality of the cable connection. For example, continuity testing and impedance measurements can help identify faulty connections or high-resistance areas that can lead to data transmission errors. By addressing these issues, the reliability and accuracy of data transmission can be improved. 4. Bandwidth and frequency response. Cable testing techniques can assess the bandwidth and frequency response of cables, which is particularly important for applications involving high-speed data transmission. By measuring parameters like insertion loss and return loss, technicians can evaluate the cable's ability to transmit signals accurately at different frequencies. Any deviations from the desired response can indicate signal degradation or limitations in the cable's performance. 5. I-diagram analysis. I-diagram analysis is a specialized technique used to evaluate the quality of digital signals transmitted through cables. It involves capturing and analyzing the waveform of the transmitted signal to assess parameters such as rise time, fall time, and signal levels. Issues such as signal distortion, jitter, or timing errors can be identified through a diagram analysis, helping to optimize data transmission performance. By utilizing these cable testing techniques, technicians can assess the quality and integrity of signals transmitted through cables. This enables them to identify and rectify issues that may affect data transmission, ensuring reliable and accurate communication within various applications such as telecommunications, data centers, and high-speed digital systems. Signal attenuation and impedance mismatches in cables can occur due to various factors. Here are some common causes. 1. Cable length signal attenuation, which refers to the gradual loss of signal strength as it travels through a cable, is directly influenced by the cable length. Longer cables tend to exhibit higher attenuation. As the signal propagates through the cable, it experiences resistance, capacitance, and inductance, leading to signal loss. Therefore, longer cable runs can result in greater attenuation, affecting signal quality and potentially causing data transmission errors. 2. Cable quality. The quality and construction of the cable itself can contribute to signal attenuation and impedance mismatches. Inferior quality cables may have higher resistance, inadequate shielding, or poor dielectric properties, leading to increased signal loss and decreased impedance matching. Cables with proper shielding, low resistance, and appropriate characteristic impedance are preferred to minimize signal degradation. 3. Frequency-dependent effects. High-frequency signals can experience more significant attenuation and impedance mismatches compared to lower-frequency signals. This effect, known as frequency-dependent loss, occurs due to factors like skin effect, dielectric losses, and the interaction between conductors in the cable. As the frequency increases, these effects become more pronounced, leading to greater attenuation and impedance variations. 4. Connectors and joints. Connectors and joints in the cable assembly can introduce impedance mismatches and signal attenuation. Poorly terminated or loosely connected connectors can cause reflections and impedance mismatches, resulting in signal degradation. Additionally, faulty or damaged connectors can introduce resistance or introduce additional discontinuities, leading to increased signal loss and decreased performance. 5. Environmental factors. Environmental conditions can impact signal attenuation and impedance mismatches. Temperature variations, moisture ingress, electromagnetic interference (EMI), and other environmental factors can degrade cable performance. For example, moisture or corrosion in the cable can increase the resistance and introduce impedance variations, affecting signal quality. 6. Cable bends and routing. Excessive cable bends or sharp bends can cause signal attenuation and impedance mismatches. When a cable is bent beyond its recommended bend radius, it can lead to increased signal loss due to increased resistance and changes in the impedance characteristics of the cable. Proper cable routing and adherence to bend radius guidelines are essential to minimize these effects. By considering these common causes and implementing appropriate measures such as using high-quality cables, proper termination techniques, and adhering to recommended installation practices, signal attenuation and impedance mismatches can be minimized, leading to improved signal quality and reliable data transmission. Determining the appropriate characteristic impedance for a cable involves considering various factors such as the application, signal frequency, cable type, and system requirements. Here are some steps to help you determine the appropriate characteristic impedance for a cable. 1. Understand the application. Start by understanding the specific application or system where the cable will be used. Consider factors such as the type of signals transmitted, analog or digital, the frequency range of the signals, and the overall system requirements. 2. Consult specifications and standards. Check the specifications and standards relevant to your application. Industry standards like ANSI I568 for Ethernet or SMPTE for video transmission often specify the recommended characteristic impedance for different cable types. and applications. 3. Analyze signal frequency. The characteristic impedance of a cable should be chosen based on the frequency range of the signals it will carry. Higher frequencies generally require lower characteristic impedance to minimize signal reflections and maintain signal integrity. For example, 50 ohms is commonly used for RF and high-frequency applications, while 75 ohms is common for video signals. 4. Consider cable type. Different cable types have different characteristic impedance specifications. For instance, twisted pair cables used in Ethernet typically have a characteristic impedance of 100 ohms G. Cat5, Cat6, while coaxial cables can have characteristic impedances of 50 ohms or 75 ohms depending on the application. 5. Evaluate system requirements. Consider the requirements of the overall system or equipment to ensure compatibility. Some devices or systems may have specific impedance requirements, and it's important to choose a cable with a characteristic impedance that matches those requirements for optimal performance. 6. Consult manufacturers' documentation. Cable manufacturers provide detailed information about their products, including characteristic impedance specifications. Refer to the manufacturer's datasheets, technical documentation, or contact their support team for guidance on selecting the appropriate cable impedance for your specific application. 7. Seek expert advice if you're uncertain or have complex requirements. It's advisable to consult with experts in the field, such as engineers or system integrators who specialize in the relevant application or industry. They can provide valuable insights and help you determine the appropriate characteristic impedance for your cable needs. By considering these steps and gathering information from reliable sources, you can determine the appropriate characteristic impedance for your cable, ensuring compatibility, signal integrity, and optimal performance within your specific application. A characteristic impedance of 75 ohms is commonly used in various applications where signal transmission requires impedance matching and efficient signal transfer. Here are some common applications that typically utilize a characteristic impedance of 75 ohms. 1. Video broadcasting. The broadcast industry extensively uses 75 ohm characteristic impedance for video transmission. It is commonly employed in applications such as television broadcasting, cable TV, CATV systems, video production, and distribution. Coaxial cables with a 75 ohm characteristic impedance are commonly used for transmitting analog and digital video signals, including standard definition SD, high definition HD, and Ultra HD UHD video. 2. Audio equipment. Some audio equipment and interfaces, particularly in professional audio and broadcast systems, use a 75 ohm characteristic impedance. For example, digital audio interfaces like AES-EBU Audio Engineering Society European Broadcasting Union and SPDIF Sony Philips digital interface often utilize 75 ohm coaxial cables for transmitting digital audio signals. 3. Video surveillance systems. Closed-circuit television CCTV and video surveillance systems often employ 75 ohm coaxial cables for transmitting video signals from cameras to monitoring or recording equipment. The characteristic impedance of 75 ohms ensures signal integrity and minimizes reflections in long cable runs. 4. RF and microwave applications. Certain RF radio frequency and microwave applications utilize a 75 ohm characteristic impedance, although 50 ohms is more commonly used in RF systems. There are specific cases where 75 ohms may be employed, particularly in specialized RF applications or regions where the 75 ohm standard is prevalent. 5. Composite video and audio. Analog composite video signals, which combine luminance Y and chrominance C components, often utilize 75 ohm coaxial cables. These cables transmit the composite video signal along with accompanying audio signals. The 75 ohm impedance helps maintain the quality of video and audio signals by minimizing reflections. It is important to note that while 75 ohm characteristic impedance is commonly used in these applications, there may be variations or exceptions based on specific standards, regional practices, or equipment specifications. Always refer to relevant standards, manufacturer's documentation, or consult with experts to ensure proper impedance matching and compatibility in your specific application. Using a characteristic impedance of 75 ohms in video broadcasting offers several advantages. Here are some of them. 1. Signal integrity. The characteristic impedance of 75 ohms ensures impedance matching between the video source, e.g., camera, and the transmission medium coaxial cable. Impedance matching minimizes signal reflections and distortions, resulting in improved signal integrity. It helps maintain the amplitude, phase, and timing characteristics of the video signal, thereby reducing signal degradation. 2. Reduce signal loss. The use of a 75 ohm characteristic impedance helps reduce signal loss during video transmission. Coaxial cables designed for 75 ohm impedance have optimized construction and dielectric properties to minimize attenuation. This ensures that the video signal reaches the destination with minimal degradation, allowing for longer cable runs without significant loss. 3. Wide compatibility. The 75 ohm characteristic impedance is widely adopted in video broadcasting equipment and systems. It is a standardized impedance value for analog and digital video signals, making it compatible with a broad range of video devices, including cameras, monitors, switchers, and distribution amplifiers. This compatibility simplifies system integration and interconnection between different equipment. 4. Industry standard. The use of 75 ohm characteristic impedance in video broadcasting is an established industry standard. It is recognized and supported by various organizations and standards bodies, such as the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers (SMPTE). Adhering to the standard impedance simplifies equipment selection, ensures interoperability, and facilitates compliance with industry guidelines. 5. Noise immunity. The balanced design of 75 ohm coaxial cables provides better noise immunity compared to unbalanced cables. The shielding in coaxial cables helps reject external electromagnetic interference (EMI) and minimizes noise pickup, resulting in cleaner video signals. This is particularly important in professional video broadcasting environments where signal quality and reliability are critical. 6. Scalability and future-proofing. The use of a standardized characteristic impedance like 75 ohms allows for scalability and future-proofing of video systems. It enables easy integration of new equipment, upgrades, or expansion of the broadcast infrastructure without major impedance compatibility issues. This flexibility helps support evolving video standards and technology advancements. By utilizing the 75 ohm characteristic impedance, video broadcasting systems can benefit from improved signal integrity, reduced signal loss, compatibility, noise immunity, and long-term scalability. These advantages contribute to high-quality video transmission, reliable performance, and seamless integration within the broadcasting environment. Impedance matching plays a crucial role in maintaining signal integrity by minimizing signal reflections and maximizing power transfer between interconnected components. When the impedance of a source device, e.g., a transmitter matches the impedance of a receiving device, e.g., a load or receiver, the following benefits are achieved. 1. Minimizing signal reflections. When there is an impedance mismatch between the source and load, a portion of the signal is reflected back towards the source at the point of the impedance transition. These reflections can interfere with the original signal, leading to distortions, signal loss, and reduced signal quality. Impedance matching helps minimize these reflections by ensuring that the impedance seen by the source is the same as the source's output impedance, resulting in smoother signal transmission. 2. Maximizing power transfer. Impedance matching allows for maximum power transfer from the source to the load. When the source impedance matches the load impedance, the power is efficiently transferred without significant signal loss. This ensures that the intended signal reaches the load with optimal amplitude, minimizing the need for amplification or compensation at the receiving end. 3. Avoiding standing waves. Impedance mismatches can lead to the formation of standing waves along the transmission line. Standing waves occur when the reflected signal combines with the incident signal, leading to constructive or destructive interference patterns. These standing waves can cause signal distortion, voltage fluctuations, and variations in signal amplitude along the transmission line. Impedance matching helps prevent the formation of standing waves, ensuring a steady and consistent signal throughout the system. 4. Reducing signal distortion. Impedance mismatch can introduce signal distortion, including signal ringing, overshoot, and undershoot. These distortions can affect the rise and fall times of the signal, causing timing errors and reducing the accuracy of the transmitted information. Impedance matching helps minimize these distortions by ensuring that the signal transitions smoothly between components, maintaining the signal's shape and timing. 5. Enhancing system bandwidth. Impedance matching contributes to the overall bandwidth and frequency response of a system. Proper impedance matching minimizes reflections and improves signal transmission across a wide frequency range. This allows for the reliable transmission of high-frequency components and prevents signal degradation and roll-off at higher frequencies. In summary, impedance matching helps maintain signal integrity by reducing reflections, maximizing power transfer, avoiding standing waves, reducing signal distortion, and enhancing system bandwidth. By ensuring impedance compatibility between interconnected components, signal quality, reliability, and overall system performance can be significantly improved.